Bioshock Infinite is the latest of the Bioshock series, and it's almost 10 years old at this point, only 2 months away from that giant milestone. And up until now, I haven't actually played that game until January of this year. And oh boy, this game is absolutely incredible and blew my expectations of what I'd already seen online about its critical acclaim and whatnot out of the water. I haven't actually played Bioshock 1 and 2. I've given Bioshock 1 a little bit of a try. I played maybe an hour of it, and I did like it, although I never got back to it. And so I don't really have any of that context surrounding the other Bioshock games, and so I played this game as a standalone video game, as many have said you could be able to do anyway. So essentially, here are my thoughts on the gameplay and the story without any spoilers, or keep the spoilers to the minimum, about Bioshock Infinite in 2023 and why it's still an awesome game even today. Although many aspects of Bioshock Infinite today are outdated, such as its gameplay systems and its combat for example, the story of Bioshock Infinite is still utterly fantastic even today. The story here is amazing. I love seeing all the different plot twists, and everything that was going on in the story was incredible. Just being in this beautiful area, this beautiful scenery of Colombia, a sky in the city, was incredible to look at. The game looks absolutely incredible, and seeing all these supernatural things going on within this world that's supposed to be Earth, and then having all these different messages which I won't spoil because they'll ruin the experience for anyone that hasn't played the game already. It's incredible to see it all play out, and the relationship between Elizabeth, the girl that's going to pay off your debt, and Booker DeWitt is incredible. Seeing it develop over the time of the game is amazing to see played out, and I really did enjoy the dynamic of both of them throughout the game and all the different turns and character developments that we see throughout the game. The protagonist here is also amazing. I didn't expect him to be that great. He looked like quite a generic protagonist, and if you look at the cover of the game, he looks like any other game protagonist. However, he is quite well written, and his character development is also astounding as he develops quite maturely throughout the game. As well as this, the girl Elizabeth, which is also on the front cover of the game, develops extremely well throughout the game as well. She has a lot of ups and downs in expressing herself, and it's amazing to see eventually by the end of the game how she has turned out. And although the ending wasn't too satisfying even for me, and quite confusing to say the least for many people out there, of course Bioshock Infinite has a lot of deeper messages and themes about different things within society, about politics and all these different things out there. However, sometimes in its portrayal of such themes, it does fail a little bit and falls flat sometimes in trying to portray too many themes at the same time. I've seen a video about the game being too ambitious, and that's an incredible way to describe the story of this game. It's extremely ambitious. The developers here were trying to write something incredibly outside of the scope for a video game of that time. However, the story here is still really well written. However, it's very ambitious, and some of the things don't really make sense within the game's narrative and what the world is trying to portray. However, overall the story here is absolutely amazing, and if you're looking for another great video game story to get invested into, Bioshock Infinite is going to give you that, even if you're not invested into the other Bioshock games like I was. Earlier I stated that some of the aspects of Bioshock Infinite are quite outdated by today, and that is for mostly felt in the gameplay area of the game. The gameplay here is quite generic. There's not much going for it in terms of its innovation or doing anything incredible in terms of horror or anything else with different themes being portrayed throughout the gameplay. I played a little bit of Bioshock 1, and from what I've played, the gameplay is centered around its horror theme, and the horror theme really drives out the gameplay, making it super intense. However, in Bioshock Infinite, it's not a horror game, so it doesn't have that same appeal in terms of trying to be innovative in that regard. All Bioshock Infinite really has going for its gameplay systems is a little bit of magic spells here and there. However, that doesn't really save the gameplay from being anything not that spectacular, and it definitely is not spectacular by any regard. The gunplay is absolutely generic. If you've played any other first-person shooter, especially Call of Duty, that's literally what Bioshock Infinite is. I feel that at the time of Call of Duty blowing up with Black Ops 2 and then Call of Duty Ghost eventually coming out, and the success of other Call of Duty games in the last couple of years, Bioshock Infinite's developers hopped on that train, hoping to get some of that success by deriving some of those Call of Duty players and all these different first-person shooter players into Bioshock, and that kind of failed because the gameplay here becomes generic because of that. Where Bioshock 1 and 2 had the unique gameplay due to its horror aspects, Bioshock Infinite doesn't have anything unique going for its gameplay. The gunplay here is just like any other first-person shooter. It doesn't even need to be described. And another annoying aspect of the gunplay here is that you can only hold two weapons at the same time. time, which is just like Call of Duty, for example. But here, you need to constantly switch from different weapons, and the fact that you gotta drop, get one, drop, and get one. It's really, really annoying to play through, and the cycle becomes extremely repetitive. And at one point, you just get to a point where you just want to carry an explosive weapon and then one sort of machine gun weapon, because you can't really suffice for anything else, because nothing else really works against all the different enemies. And it takes away from some of the experimentation of the game, because you can only carry 2 weapons, and you can't just find weapons all the time just lying around. So it becomes a kind of repetitive cycle, especially at the end of the game. Although there's no real innovation here in Bioshock Infinite, it's still quite fun to play through, although it's nothing incredible or anything you would talk about. However, some of the magic spells, or vigors that they're called in this game, are quite fun to play with. You have different magic spells that have all these different abilities that they can do. For example, one blows away enemies with water, while another one shocks an enemy with electricity. These different abilities help to mix up the gameplay formula. However, the gameplay still stays generic, because that same core formula of shooting enemies in the same spot again and again with the exact same weapons again and again becomes extremely repetitive. And the magic spells do a little bit to fix that up, but it can't actually fix the core problem at hand. And another thing is that there's air combat in this game, where you'll be traversing on skylines, as they're called, and you'll see these quite often in the game. The skylines are quite repetitive as well. Of course, they've been put in the gameplay to make it not repetitive, but it actually makes the cycle a lot more repetitive, and I don't really like it at all in that aspect. It's quite annoying, to be honest, and the combat here is absolutely horrendous while on the skylines. The normal core gameplay is alright, like I still can have some fun with it. However, the skylines are absolutely boring to play through, and I dreaded every time I had to go through one in order to get to the next section, while fighting enemies on it was absolutely so boring and tedious to go through as well. So although I do have so many complaints about Bioshock Infinite's gameplay, it's alright at its core. It's okay to play through. However, if you're wanting to spend a lot of time looking around Bioshock Infinite's world, that is also something you can do. However, the fact that you have to go through the same cycle of combat again and again and again can deter you from playing this game. So if you're just doing a streamlined playthrough of the story like I did, then there's nothing too annoying there. However, if you want to collect all the collectibles and go through the game multiple times, the gameplay here doesn't make that such a satisfying experience, and I wouldn't recommend it overall. However, the gameplay here would be about a 6 out of 10, although it's quite generic, and don't come into here looking for anything innovative, as I've said before. And I don't really recommend playing the game just based on this merit alone, because the main merit of the game is, of course, in its story aspect. Well, that's my thoughts on Bioshock Infinite in 2023. It's still quite an amazing game, and I really did enjoy playing through the game. Overall, I'd probably give it about an 8.5 out of 10. The only reason I think the game is dragged down is due to its outdated gameplay. Although that gameplay might have been satisfying in 2013, in 2023, such gameplay has been done over and over again to the point where it's not really anything innovative or too fun to play through, especially if you're planning on doing multiple playthroughs of the game. Anyway, that's all from me for today's video. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.